Hi, my name is Hansen and I'm a retired tugboat captain. I was the last independent tugboat operator in Fells Point, and I operated the tug Athena that was built in 1939. I operated her for 15 years out of Fells Point. And if you have any questions about that time and what kind of work I did and where we go and what we did, and you can go ahead, feel free to ask me the questions and I'll answer them as good as I can. Okay, so I have some questions here, and one is from Walt Mathers, and the question is, can you lend any information about the Charles D. Gator? If it's the Gator that was owned by Ralph Ford, then I don't know much about her, but if that's the boat, then I actually ran her, because when he moved from Pratt Street over to the old liquors factory at Boston Street, I actually towed some of his equipment over there with the Gator, but I don't have much recollection of that anymore, so this is really all I can tell you. Okay, then we have another question here. This is the question from Mac Jones. I don't know if you have seen the show Wire, but no, this sounds like Hollywood stuff, and I'm not too much in on that. It's something about the crime and the decline of the city and the port and corruption, and Baltimore had a lot of corruption, but so did Chicago and Philadelphia and New York and all the other cities. It's the American way of life, and it's there, and it's been there, but on the waterfront, I never saw any of it really. Nobody ever approached me for money or anything like that, and going all the way back to when I first came here in 1958. On ships, we would dock down at the end of Clinton Street, or we would dock over at South Locust Point, and Scandinavian kids, 17, 18 years old, we would walk up to Fells Point, where we used to hang out at a bar called the Viking. It's where the H&H Bakery store is at now, and I never heard of anybody being rolled or assaulted, or of course we were big boys, we were big guys, so I assumed nobody was going to screw with us, but then again, like I say, Fells Point was pretty darn safe. It was a neighborhood, people lived here, the people who worked in the canneries and on the docks and all lived here, and the tugboat people lived here, so it was a very safe, and I think basically Baltimore was pretty safe too. So I guess that answers your question. Okay, then we have another question here from I can't tell who that is from. Did I ever assist in any sort of emergencies, rescue of people overboard or stuck on a ship on fire? Well, not really, but when I worked on the Port Welcome way back in the late 60s, one afternoon this lady fell overboard coming off the gangplank, and her young nephew jumped in to save her, just to find out that he couldn't swim. So I jumped in and helped both of them up into the crew, the boatswain, and could put down a line, and I tie a line around them one by one and haul them out of there. But that's the only disasters that we really had in Baltimore. Okay, then we have from David W. Woodell. Okay, I look forward to seeing this. I'm an author of documentary history and inspection. Okay, so he's talking about the all steam tug, Baltimore, I believe. Let me see. Okay, so I knew about that all steam tug, and actually in 1976 I was the liaison person on the tall ship Denmark, sailing down from New York to Baltimore, and we docked down at the inner harbor before there really was an inner harbor. And right at the stern of the boat was the old steam tug Baltimore docked, and they came over and invited us over for a beer, and some of us went over there, and on the stern of the boat was a Coca-Cola cooler full of beer. And they kind of showed us around the boat, and that's all I can remember of that thing. Okay, so there was two more questions from Mr. Jones, and one of them, why was he the last tugboat operator at Fells Point? Well, in 2001 I sold out to a Philadelphia company, and the boat ended up in Philadelphia. So that's the reason why I was the last one in Fells Point. And anybody else who had been there, like Sadowski, they had left years earlier. Why did he eventually leave the tugboat life behind? Well, I retired when I was 68 years old, I believe, in 2008, and I was working for Wayne Brothers at the time. And my son had started out as a deckhand, and I decided to stay 2 more years to train him. So that's when that ended. Then that's when I retired. And then we're back to David Wooddell. So I don't really know. The only thing I know about the Baltimore was that it ended up, I think, being owned, but I think it was the DuPont family, and it sunk up in the river up there in the Upper Bay, and then it was brought up, and I don't really know anything much more about it. The only thing I do know is that I worked for 2 years on an all-Norwegian tramp steamer, so I know a little bit about what steamboats are all about. But I think that I'm pretty sure that the Baltimore was a coal burner, but I don't know if it was or not. The one that I worked on was an oil burner, but I spent 2 years on there, and the steamboats are nice because you can stand down in the engine room and talk because they're so quiet. Okay, so I have a question from William Band, and it's about a German submarine that came in here in 1916. Well, I was born in 1940, and that's I mean the boat that submarine came in here 104 years ago, and it's way before my time. But I did read about it, and I think all the information that you would want to know about that thing is in public records. So I can't answer that question. Sorry about that. Okay, so that would be the last question here. I think, do we have any other questions? Okay, so we have somebody asked me what kind of, and I can't find that here. What kind of work did I do with the tug? And pretty much anything that came our way. We towed mud scows, we towed container barges, we assisted in some ship docking, we towed a great big crane, we towed Viking ships, we towed a hydraulic, a big generator that was supposed to work on the current, and we towed that so they could see if it actually worked. And I mean, we towed a lot of different things, but our main job for years was we towed 5,000 tons of caustic soda, sodium hydroxide, and mostly from Philadelphia. We unloaded it. We got it loaded from a ship that would come in, and we would tow it over here to Curtis Bay to W.I. Gray's chemical company, and then we would go down to Norfolk sometime and pick some up. And at one time we were actually operating 2 caustic barges, one for a company up in New York, and that was the bread and butter. That's the only reason why I was able to stay in business, really. And and I have some pictures of. Let me show you here. Here's a picture of my 2 crew members dressed up like Vikings when we towed the 2 Viking ships from the Potomac River into Little Italy on Columbus Day. We didn't realize it was Columbus Day, but it was kind of funny. And you can see here we're towing them side by side, 2 of them, and they came over from Norway, and then we have here a picture of a container barge, the New England trader that we towed up to Philadelphia. And see what else we have here. Okay, here's an oil barge that we used to tow. You know, we are coming. I don't know. That was probably up in the Delaware River. And here's a picture of the Tug Athena, actually up on land down in Newport News. We were having the bottom painted. And here's some other picture. Now let me see here. Okay, here's a picture of us being lifted up by the crane, the Big Red, that we also towed. And the guy never paid me, so I took it out in trade. And that's when the Bethlehem Steel Key Highway shipyard was being broken down so they could build condominiums. So basically, we were the last vessel ever repaired in the Beth Steel Key Highway shipyard. They worked on my rudder there, and like I say, he never paid me for a job I did for him, so he did this in trade. And then I have some pictures here from down in the engine room, and this is the all electrical board, because the boat was built in 1939 and she was a DC boat, and we had her rectified over to AC. So the galley was AC, but all the motors, the pumps and everything in the engine room was DC. And this is the all DC board, and it looks very much like the one that Dr. Frankenstein used to jumpstart his you know, the guy, whatever his name was. And here's some other pictures from the engine room. Let me see. Okay, that's the engine room here, and the boat was built in 1939, and then it was bought in 1940 by the Navy, and it ended up in Boston as a submarine net handling boat during the war, and there was bunks for 12 people. There was 4 bunks up in the superstructure, and here's the galley, the old galley with the refrigeration underneath. And here's a picture of me with the old diesel stove sitting in the corner. And here's the sink and the cabinet. So you know, there would be 12 crew members. She would have 12 crew members during the time that the Navy operated her. So in 1945 she was sold back to private business, and I think she ended up in Baltimore in 1966 and was bought by Charles Harper, and he used her to tow coal barges from down here at the coal pier out to Bethlehem Steel, and also from Norfolk to Bethlehem Steel. And a partner and I bought her in 1986 for $36,000 because there was absolutely no work. The harbor was almost at a standstill, and we thought it was going to pick up again, but it really didn't pick up for a while. And so we, you know, I mean, we did the best we could, and we made a living for 15 years. And actually, I owned 10 boats, and this is the only one that I actually made money on. I lost money on 9 boats, and the Athena, I bought it for $36,000 and sold her for $65,000. So that's more of the story. Don't buy a pleasure boat because you're going to lose money. So this is about it for this section. I think I don't know if there's any other questions to be answered. Maybe we'll wait for somebody else to send in some questions. Oh yeah, there was somebody who asked, but I think I already answered that question about what we did, what kind of work we did, and I think that's already been answered. Okay, so I have a question from Scott Roberts. You know, what was your favorite tug? Well, there's actually 2 of them that was my favorite tugs. It was the Britannia that was owned by Baker Whiteley, and then later on by McAllister. And we did ship docking with that. And that tug, you could back it. Most tugs, when you back, they have great big rudders. We call them barn doors, and they would back hard to the left because that's the way the prop usually turns. And then it's almost impossible to back straight. But the Britannia would back straight from Baltimore to Norfolk. And also she would turn in her own circle. She would, like, say, she would turn on a dime. And the Athena was exactly the same way. She would turn on a dime. And she would back completely straight, which is really handy with it. You know, today it doesn't matter because you've got twin screw tugs, and you can back straight. But with a single screw tug, you know, it's a totally different ball game. I mean, it's the difference between a single screw tug and a twin screw tug is the same as the difference between a horse team and a car. so there you go. You know, single screw tugs. You know, you only have one shot, and you can't stay there and work yourself sideways and do all these tricks that you can do with a twin screw tug. But you know, and back then we were always underpowered. We were always underpowered, and they used to say a good tugboat captain, you know, has 800 horsepower in the engine room and 1,000 horsepower up in his head. And then they tugboat captains are loud. You know, I've been thrown out of barge for being too loud, and it because, you know, we had to overpower the engine and shout orders to the crew and make sure they didn't get hurt and stuff. And there's an old saying is that the only one louder than a tugboat captain is his wife. Okay, thank you. That's about it, I guess, for this section.